Good afternoon from Prague. I am Martina Pecková-Černá, and I am greeting you from the Arts and Theatre Institute. It is our pleasure to welcome you to the Green Thursday series of international online discussions with Czech and foreign guests from the field of performing arts. We are here every fourth Thursday at the same time, 3 p.m. Central European Time, with diverse moderators and guests ranging from dance and theater artists to curators, culture managers, and theorists.
The overall topic, "The show must go on, offline," was chosen so that we can address the common theme of sustainability and the performing arts from many perspectives. These include the response of the performing arts to the state of the environment and the COVID pandemic, as well as the field's emerging strategies to address urgent social changes and paradigm shifts in culture and in our societies. These discussions are organised by the International Cooperation Department and in collaboration with the European projects Create to Connect, Create to Impact, and the Central European Performing Arts Network, PACE V4. They also correspond with the Arts and Theatre Institutes, Culture and the Climate activities, which serve as a communication platform for public and independent cultural organisations in the Czech Republic on global environmental challenges. We are available online on the Zoom platform right now, and later you can find our recordings on our YouTube channel. You, our spectators, will have the opportunity to ask our guests questions during the live meeting. Please feel free to use the Q&A section in your Zoom application.
Good morning to our attendees in the United States and good afternoon to our attendees in Central Europe. Welcome to this special edition of Green Thursdays, The Show Must Go On, Offline. This event is special because it sits within two frames. It is the final episode in this season of Green Thursdays, and it is also part of Rehearsal for Truth, a festival honoring the legacy of Czech playwright, dissident, and political thinker Václav Havel and featuring theater from Central Europe. Founded in 2017, the festival is organized by the Václav Havel Library Foundation and the Bohemian Benevolent and Literary Association in New York. I'm Becca McFadden, and I will be your moderator for this discussion. We have a great lineup of international guests with extensive and broad experience of theater in digital space. And we'll be hearing from them about the projects and organizations that they're involved with, and also have lots of space for audience questions and contributions. So please do make use of that comment section. But first, we'd like to briefly introduce the partners that have made this event possible, starting with Pavla Niklova, director of the Václav Havel Library Foundation in New York, one of the organizers of Rehearsal for Truth. Pavla?
Thank you very much, Becca, for your introduction. Hello, everyone. It is a great pleasure to introduce the Rehearsal for Truth Festival, and we are happy that this panel discussion, Screening Theatre, could be a part of our program. We are also very pleased that we could invite Vijay Matthew, the co-founder of Howler Theatre Commons, to participate in the talk. Thank you very much to all the organizers. Rehearsal for Truth Theatre Festival started in 2017 to honor Václav Havel's theatrical legacy and to provide space and time for encounters of performing artists from Europe and the United States. As we all know, it is quite difficult and rare to present European companies in the US. It is not only very costly because of travel and transport, but also securing working visas for artists is a complicated process, and basically only big production houses or event spaces can afford to go through this process. Therefore, we decided to organize this festival, which is basically a showcase of Central European theater. We started working with many partners to make this event happen. They are namely and mainly theater institutes in Prague, Bratislava, Budapest, and Warsaw, but also many other partners and cultural institutes of these 4 countries in New York City. Apart from live productions, during the 4 years of our existence, we have managed to enlarge the program by stage readings of contemporary European plays that have been translated into English, and they are produced by US directors and actors. And also we have found one permanent partner in Jersey City to present live European productions as well. So you people can see them both in New York and New Jersey now. We have decided to start the festival with partners from the so-called Visegrad countries. Václav Havel deeply believed that these 4 countries have shared a lot of common history in the 20th century, and that it may make sense for us to work together very closely and approach the rest of the world together. However, we are not close to other regions. One year we worked with Romania and presented Romanian theater as well. And this year we are including stage reading of a play by South African playwright in hope that it will resonate with American audiences in current social discourse about systemic racism. Of course, because of the pandemic, we could not present any events live. We switched to Zoom for stage readings, and we postponed festival from September of last year till now. We started on a Monday with a screening. We had first stage reading on Tuesday and live performance premiere of one of Havel's short plays yesterday. And I'm happy to tell you that we have a lot of people coming with big smiles, and artists are absolutely excited. And those 3 days make me believe that live culture will always be here. And now it will be only enriched by virtual opportunities and collaborations like this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pavla. I'd now like to introduce Martina Pecková-Černá, head of the Department of International Cooperation at the Arts and Theatre Institute in Prague, the initiators of this discussion series and the Show Off podcast.
Thank you very much, Becca. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, Europe. Good morning, Americas. It is an enormous pleasure to announce the last episode of our international discussions cycle in this strange season 2020-2021 as a part of the Rehearsal for Truth Theater Festival in New York. We are so grateful, at least for this virtual collaboration, which has been almost the only one possible during lockdown. As you heard, we dedicated the particular episodes to the adaptation of theater, dance, and contemporary circus to the COVID times, and right now also to questions related with our return to post-COVID so-called normal. Our discussions are summarized in the podcast series Show Off, which is made broadly accessible for listeners from all over the world via the Show Off Simplecast platform. You are warmly welcome to discover topics such as Green Deal for Performing Arts, theater as cultural institution, or digital shift in theater, which might be called a third theater reform. Some episodes will also be announced by my colleagues later on. Creators, theoreticians, and producers are welcome into this series with a special preference given to guests from Central and Eastern European region. Therefore, this a special collaboration also with the Rehearsal for Truth Festival. The dramaturgy is prepared by the Arts and Theatre Institute in Prague, but not only. It is a collaboration with our colleagues from theatre institutes in Poland, Slovakia, and Hungary. In its preparation, we take advantage from Central European specifics, which is a dense historical infrastructure of public theaters and a vibrant and diverse independent performing arts scene, which emerged mainly after 1989. So you are invited to discover all these projects, initiatives, personalities in our talks. I will conclude with the words of the former Czech President Václav Havel, who said, "Central Europe has always been both a historical and spiritual, but also a political phenomenon." With the reference to this opinion, the discussion platform we stimulate through the Green Thursday cycle and the PACE-V4 project, which is supported from the national funds and also the International Visegrad Fund, is not only aiming to keep pace with Central European performing arts, but also to discuss current social and political agenda in our region and in the world. So enjoy the talk, and I hope strongly that next time we will meet in person again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martina. I'd now like to introduce Zuzana Licianska and Adam Flonai. Zuzana is coming to us from the Theatre Institute in Bratislava and Adam from the Hungarian Theatre Museum. They've each hosted previous episodes of this discussion series, and they'll speak to us a bit about those conversations.
Thank you, Becca, very much, and hello to everyone on both sides of the Atlantic. I work for the Theatre Institute, which is mainly set by the government for preservation of theatre documentation and for documentation of theatre life in general. But in addition to this archive, museum, library, and publishing departments, we are very happy to facilitate also international cooperation of our institutes and also on a broader scale. So that's how we manage somehow to cooperate on the PACE-V4 projects, and that's how I became one of the moderators of the issue edition of this series called Drama in Quarantine. It was devoted to sustainability of drama as a literary genre and and to sustainability of a playwright as a creative being, which is in this very difficult pandemic situation. And as Martina already announced, the podcasts are available on the website. So if you have some time, you can listen to the presentations of some very fascinating projects from all over Europe, such as, for instance, the project Living Newspaper, launched by the Royal Court Theatre in London. That was in fact inspired by the Federal Theatre Project that was established during the 30s to help to fund theatre activities during the Big Depression in the United States. So you might be familiar with these activities, and it's sort of an attempt to reanimate these projects. And just to make it short, another project presented was a festival Lyubimovka in Moscow, Monovit series of staged monodramas from Croatia, and drama contest that is launched by our Theatre Institute in Bratislava for Czech and Slovak playwrights. So that's all. Feel free to join the discussion.
And I am Adam Funai. I represent the Hungarian Theatre Institute, which has been a part of PACE-V4 ever since the beginning. And the Institute participated in many projects concerning theatre researches and, of course, documenting the Hungarian theatre life not only in a Hungarian, but also in a Central European or European context. And the deputy director of the Institute is also a member of this project, Attila Szabó, but unfortunately he cannot be here with us today. He was my co-host when we hosted episode 5 of this webinar series, which was called Zooming Theater. And the aim of that episode was to focus on online projects that were developed during the pandemic, because personally I found it very interesting how quickly theater was able to adapt to these unusual circumstances. And it was interesting to discuss these aspects, what can be transformed into the online space to keep the spirit of theater. Is it theater or is it something else? Is it the next step for the art form or is it a new art form? And our guests introduced their projects, and interestingly, they focused on the advantages that were provided by these sad and tragic times. They did their best to shed light on the power of theater that forces itself to survive. And as one of our guests wonderfully put it, theater is like nature that reappears in a dead and abandoned city. It's always there, it cannot be destroyed, it survives, it adapts. And I believe that is why this series is very important, because it focuses on this part of theater and this part of these unusual times. And I also wrote an episode of the podcast based on this webinar, which can be found on showup.cz. Thank you.
Thank you, Zuzana and Adam. I'd like now to introduce Krystyna Mogilnicka from the Theater Institute in Warsaw.
Thank you. So I will very shortly introduce Zbigniew Raszewski Theater Institute. It's a public institution, just like similar institutions in our regions. And our aim is to support and initiate different aspects of theatrical life in Poland, and also to collaborate. So collaborating with PACE-B4 a network for performing arts and in Central and Eastern Europe is definitely one of our favorite activity. And not prolonging this introduction, I will invite you to the discussion, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Krystyna. And thank you, everyone. That really helps, I think, to set the context. And it's also introduced some really interesting topics already into the conversation around the relationship between theater and digitality. I'm struck as we turn our attention to the main panel and the topic of streaming theater, I'm struck by the moment at which we're convening this conversation. This discussion series has been going on since September, and we're certainly in a very different place now than we were then. We've gone through a second wave or a prolonged set of theater closures, and we're now in a space where in many countries theaters are starting to open. We're also at a space where it seems quite likely that, partly because of some of the benefits we've discovered, but also because of urgent environmental concerns, these modes of digital presentation and distribution and collaboration are likely to stay with us. So at this very interesting moment, with sort of one foot in a present that is in a moment of shift and one foot in the future, I've asked our panelists to speak to us about their projects and organizations, to give us a sense of what they do, but also with a particular focus on what the lessons of the past about 18-month period have been, and what feels most urgent to them now at this stage in this journey that we've all been on together for the past year and a half. So I would like to now introduce our panelists. From the United States, we have Vijay Mathew. Vijay is cultural strategist and co-founder of HowlRound Theater Commons based at Emerson College in Boston. Welcome, Vijay.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'll just start by just briefly telling you what HowlRound Theater Commons does. We're a online platform, basically a media publishing platform where the content, it's mostly essays and live streams, are produced by the worldwide theater communities for the theater community. So it's very much practitioner focused, and we're set up to be very similar to an open source project where we have a particular agenda for creating a digital commons to benefit the theater field. And then the editorial agenda is where we are asking the theater field itself to propose ideas for essays, for live streams that are disruptive to the status quo in some kind of idea, or that wish to share or expand on some kind of progressive idea, and progressive being defined as advancing justice or social justice concerns. And so we publish about 4 essays a week, all written again by cultural managers, by artists, with the audience of being other artists and cultural managers in theater, theater and performance broadly. And then as well as that much or even more live streams, mostly produced by organizations like this, who may have a panel that they want to live stream and that could benefit from amplification on the HowlRound platform. There are also performances that people live stream, but those are more specifically if they're geared towards sharing some kind of new aesthetics or some kind of new form. Again, all facing the field itself, the practitioner field itself, and not for regular performance-going audiences. And we've been around for 10 years now, based in Boston at Emerson College. And one of the things about the pandemic during these 18 months has been, for us at least, our work for live streaming has increased by 5-6 times, where in the past, I think 2020, we had about 500 events organized by at least 400 different organizations, live streamed events, and mostly conversations, some performances, conferences. What was really came as in stark relief was that what we were experiencing was a collapse, an uncontrolled collapse of the usual way that we have cultural mobility and knowledge sharing within our field, which is air travel. And there was this collapse, temporary collapse of air travel. And that really revealed how dependent we have become over the past 20, 30 years on inexpensive air travel. And inexpensive meaning this is subsidized, and where the real costs of traveling, such as the environmental cost, is not taken in account of. So that was a really important kind of learning takeaway from this period, as well as while that was collapsing, there was this immediate access and inclusion of artists from the global south. So on the platform, on the HowlRound platform, there were many more artists who were coming from the African continent, who are coming from the Caribbean, and who previously would have limited access, both because of the way that our field is set up to privilege cultural mobility that's based on air travel, and less on these digital platforms where access is better or easier. Another thing that come out of this was a great thing, which I think is going to actually continue past pandemic, is a real kind of collective awareness on accessibility for people with disabilities. So there was many more captioning happening for live events, live captioning, as well as sign language interpretation. And so then, I'll carry on to the next prompt that Becca gave us, which was, what do we feel is the most urgent right now? And I think it's this huge predicament that we're in, which is we have to decarbonize immediately. And yesterday we need to, or 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we need to decarbonize. And that's a predicament because our field, the way that we have cultural mobility within the at least practitioner-facing field, is an incredible dependence on air travel. And just transferring everything to the virtual space is not the answer at all, because this is highly polluting, not nearly as much to the degree as air travel, but this is as polluting as possible. We have to start to create these norms of using much, much, much less. We have to ration ourselves on our energy consumption. And these are impossible thoughts. But this is the most urgent thing, and actually should be the forefront conversation of how do we do this? How do we go through a process of degrowth and to spend a lot more time focusing on our local communities and geographies, traveling less or not at all, and then using this space, the virtual space, as maybe as a transition period, just for a few years, to figure out as a global practitioner community, how we're going to proceed, what can we learn from each other. And yeah, so I'll stop there.
Thanks very much, Vijay. Just a quick note of structure. We'll take these first initial introductions from our guests, and at that point we'll open up the conversation. So if you're an attendee with a question, I could just ask you to hold on to it until we've had our 4 introductions. I would now like to invite Joanna Nutkowska to speak to us. She's joining us from Novi Theatre in Warsaw, where she is Vice Director and Head of the Department for Production and International Relations. She's also a founding member of the Culture for Climate initiative. Welcome, Joanna.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. Yes, maybe I will first say a few words about our International Cultural Center, Nowy Teatr, which was newly built 5 years ago. But we were functioning since 12 years as an ensemble and group gathered around a group of artists and people gathered around our artistic director, Krzysztof Walikowski. Now we have this amazing new building, which is a cultural center. We are a production house. We do a lot of performance. We produce. We make a dance performance, concerts. We try to have a big international cooperations and try to be present on the festivals and show our works. So this was always very important aspect of our activity, to be present on the festivals. That means traveling a lot, and it collapsed all last year. So it was the time to start thinking differently what we are supposed to do. However, our space is not only about giving the performance and showing something to people. We always wanted to build a community. We always wanted to have a dialogue with our audience, with our public, to share things, and also to raise up important questions, somehow to sense the moods and predict what's going to happen, and how what it's important to highlight, the topics which are important for us to highlight. So it was very strange and difficult times in the beginning of the pandemic, and we have to rethink the way we act and the way we function every day. In every day. And then the questions of streaming came, and it was very difficult for us, because in the beginning we thought like, okay, is it okay to stream the performances, especially the new one? Does it make sense? Will people come when we will show it to such a broad audience? But then we started to do it, and it turns out that it was amazing because we could reach much wider audiences, and the people really wanted to attend those performances. I think we during the pandemic we all shared this terrific experience, horrible one. But it was amazing in a sense that for a long time, humankind didn't share anything together, and it was like worldwide. And we all, after building these borders and lockdowns, we have to start thinking about these borders and start to think about collaboration, start to think about how to be caring for each other and tender to each other, and about the solidarity, which was super important at those times. So I think that it was very strange and very unifying experience in a sense that we have to start collaborate and think about reaching the audience and think about mobility in completely different manner. And very opening as well, because as I said, we could reach completely different audiences and have a contact with our viewers. There was such a quotation in the pandemic times that imagine lockdown without culture, no films, no music, no theater. And for me, it was super important because I saw our role and the theater role as a kind of giving hope to people, and this culture was very important. That our role was to kind of also entertain people in this very strange and difficult times. And I think it stayed with us, and also the sense of togetherness. It's going to stay with us. So it was interesting experience, and we will see how it will impact our future work. And this is about the theater. I'm also a founding member of the Culture for Climate Collective. As I said, we've been operating since 1 year, and we are the Culture for Climate Collective is ecofeminist grassroots movement. We are 9 women collaborating, and we decided that we want to make a guide on sustainability and to help organizations and institutions to make their functioning more green and more sustainable, and to work with the sense that the ecology doesn't have to be expensive. Sometimes it's super easy and it can be cheap, especially in a long-term perspective. So for 1 year, we were working on this guide, and now it's online. And yes, I encourage you to check it out. I think there are many interesting tips. Also, according to what Vijay said about the internet, and I think it's very important to raise the awareness in the times when we are showing everything on screens. There are Zooms, there are streamings, there's everything, but I'm afraid we are not aware how big a carbon footprint this produce. And I think this is very urgent for us now to rethink how we use this internet and what we do about it. Because of course, it's in those times of lockdown, it was important to have a contact and to be online and to be with people and to connect. But on the other hand, I think we should think about it in a more sustainable way and how to use it in a sustainable way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like now to welcome from the Czech Republic, Martin Zavadil, CEO of the Dramux platform for streamed theater performances. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you. Dramux is one sentence streaming online platform for theaters. Yesterday, I would say mainly Central Europe, but today, a few hours ago, we had theaters from Australia, Israel, US, New York, even. So for globally for the theaters and mainly for the spectators. The main goal of the Dramux is, which I represent you, is basically to expand the time which people are spending with theater. That's and overcome the barrier and the distances to help to the people to find Haluk theater in Spain if you are living in Prague, or Haluk theater in Kiev, etc. So that's what we are doing, and help to the theaters basically to create the environment, create like a distribution layer for the theaters, because, and I agree with what was said, theaters sometimes struggling with the distribution, so that's how we want to help them, even financially. Yeah, so this is like what we are doing, and so far we have a cooperation with roughly 130 theaters around the globe, and almost 200 performances, very different kinds, from French style to national theaters, and we are providing subtitles, etc., to help connect the nations and the people around the globe. Yeah, so that's Tramox and me in like a very, very simple and quick description. Yeah, thank you.
And can I ask you what feels most urgent to you
I can
now?
hear you. I do.
Can you hear me now? Are we back? Okay. Could I ask you, after your experience of coming through the pandemic period at this sort of point as things start to reopen, what feels like the most urgent issue that you're dealing with at Dramox, or when you're thinking about this this field of streaming theater as a whole?
There is, and I already can see, because my work is to speak with hundreds of theaters around the globe every month. So they are starting to lose the amount of knowledge which they acquired during the pandemic times. Logically, because it's very hard for the theaters to find the way for the like do the streaming and at the same time do the normal way of doing the theater physical one. Yeah, so this is something which I can see around the globe. The people are telling me, yeah, we did that, but we need to focus somewhere else, and they are losing that knowledge, that skill, which they acquire because they are distributed by everything else. And by the way, that's the reason why we're helping them there so they can focus on core what they are doing and what they are good in. Physical theater, and that's like a main thing. Of course, I think Vian or some of the speakers already mentioned that online is extension, is a tool to, from my perspective, help people to spend more time with the theater, yeah. So that's something which is happening. I can see that, and I hope that this will not happen in a big scale, because it was such a loss. Did I answer your question?
You did, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. And finally, I'd like to introduce Gert Nessens, joining us from Brussels. He is EU Projects and Operations Manager of the European Festivals Association, and will also be speaking to us about the Perform Europe initiative. Welcome.
Thank you, Becca. And welcome to everybody. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. And yes, so I'm working for the European Festivals Association. In short, we say EFA, so I will always talk about EFA. And so that's the oldest festival network in Europe, of more than 90 festivals and member festivals in about 40 countries. Next year we are celebrating our 70 years, so we are really existing for a long time. What we mainly do is what the network does. We empower the interactions between festivals, and also between festivals and governments and so on, especially the European government. But we go further than just our members, and in 2019 we created festivalfinder.eu, which is a project based on a previous project which was called Europe for Festivals, Festivals for Europe. And the festivalfinder.eu is an online search tool for festivals, for audiences to discover the arts festivals in Europe. And in that community, we represent at this moment more than 2,300 festivals. Today, this festivalfinder.eu platform is evolving to a platform that facilitates and stimulates a collaboration, a stronger collaboration, not just to the audience, but also between festivals and all their stakeholders. And at this moment, we are working very hard to create stronger bonds between festivals and their cities, festival cities. Also, IFA is also involved in, as a main partner in the Perform Europe project. Perform Europe is a project EU funded. We started that together with ITM, who is the leading partner of this project, and the European Dance Network, Circo Strada, and also the consulting partner, IDEA Consult. And we received the mandate from the European Commission to rethink cross-border performing arts presentation or touring in a more inclusive, sustainable, and balanced way. So it's a 18-month pilot project. And in that project, we go through 4 stages. The first one was the research phase, which is already finished. Yesterday on the Perform Europe platform, the insights of this research were published. And then in the second step, we launched last week the platform, the digital platform, where presenters and producers can apply to participate in the project. The third element there is that we will really test the support scheme, because it's about a support scheme. I don't think I said that already. So it's there will be grants given. So we received a budget from the European Commission to give grants to sustainable touring projects, innovative sustainable touring projects. And in the fourth step, we will create policy or design policy recommendations for the European Commission. So hereby, I, of course, want to invite all producers of artistic works and presenters like venues, festivals, and other presentation contexts in the 40 Creative Europe countries plus the UK to apply until the 7th of July on the platform. This is just the first step, this application, and you can present yourself there and your ideas for more sustainable and inclusive touring. In a second step, after a matching period that will be around September, the selected participants can form partnerships and can apply for a grant for sustainable touring. Across this project, artistic works as well as presentation contexts are considered to be physical, digital, or hybrid. So it's not just about physical touring, it's about touring, digital touring also, or digital presentation of performances. I can maybe later put all the links of these websites in the chat. Then about your questions, Becca. So I can say, I can only speak as a network. I cannot speak as a producer of artistic works or a presenter. And as a network, I can say that the pandemic strongly intensified our work as a network. It didn't change it, but it intensified it. So because there was a strong need and a strong need to talk, share information, experiences, talk about adapted presentation methods and so on. So for lots of festivals, it was new, of course. Lots of them couldn't go on physically. Some did go on physically, by the way, but most of them did not last year. But this year, already a lot of festivals have been going on and are going on at this moment. I have maybe a few points that I want to bring into discussion also. So we are not militant as a network. We see both sides. There are, let's say, there are presenters, festivals that think that it's not needed to present digitally. The main activity or the main aim of festivals is to present physically. On the other hand, there are other festivals saying, yeah, we have to go with this new way of working, and we have to even create digital performances, which is the other side. But in fact, it's a contradiction, because we see it also, maybe I can maybe explain it best with budgets, because governments are switching budgets from physical to digital presentation, which is not the idea, I think. Huh? So it's two things next to each other that have to exist. And it was already said by other persons before me now, that it's maybe an add-on on the physical. I would even say it's another thing. It's two things next to each other. You have the physical performances or physical presentations, and you have the digital presentations. And we are also speak about hybrid presentations, even if it's not that easy, I think. So it's also, that's on the budget, you see it very clearly there. That's the danger. We have to be careful that it's not switching from physical to digital. When you look at it, not from the budget view, but from the artistical point of view, there is also some kind of contradiction. You have, we had some festivals saying, we are going from three-dimensional to two-dimensional. But as a festival, we are specialized in three-dimensional. The two-dimensional, that's for cinema, that's for television. And now festivals have to go two-dimensional. Also, digital arts, that they exist already more than 50 years, these digital artists. So it's nothing new at this moment. I think I have the feeling that it's more like, because of the pandemic, that festivals were forced to bring it still to the audience, to bring artistic works to the audience. There was a need, as also Joanna said. They have to play a role, and it brings me to the audience then. And there, maybe my question is audience experience. There is no investigation, or not that I know, research done on how audience perceives these online performances. Just recording performances or live streaming performances that are physical and then live streamed. What do they experience exactly, this audience? Do they stay long when they watch it, or is it a different behavior of this audience? On the other hand, these experiences may be the difficult thing for me, at least. My experience personal, it was not the same as going to a performance. It's a big difference. There is no social aspect. You don't have the proximity. You're not in proximity of the artists. It's not the vibrations are not there. So it's a bit difficult. But on the other hand, from it improved the accessibility, and it was already said also by other speakers. And I think that's positive. But maybe it created a new gap now that there are still a lot of people in the world that don't have a computer with internet connection. So maybe there is, even if we think we are filling the gap, there is a new gap coming there. And also, maybe my last point was that the internet is not that green as we think. It was already said 3 times. For our festivalfinder.eu, the company we are working with, they're very hard working on making it more green by, I give just a small example. When you are surfing on the internet in your browser, each time you open one of the websites, a lot of data is transferred to your computer. And they are working on that the first data which is transferred is as little as possible, and that you only transfer lots of data when you go deeper in the website. So even on that level, they are thinking, how can we be more green? Because it's, I think everybody agrees here in the panel that the impact is quite big. I heard something like the second big country in the world, when you see it as a country on a yearly basis, that it consumes the electricity of the second biggest country in the world, the internet. So it's not nothing. So that's maybe what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for your contributions. And it does really seem like there's a shared set of concerns here with the greenness of the digital space of the internet, or its problematic nature, the fact that it's not at all carbon neutral being a huge topic that it feels like it's important to dig into. And also I'm hearing a set of contradictions where, you know, on one hand, there's been this tremendous increase in accessibility from geographic regions that haven't been able to access things before previously, and also allowing spectators with disabilities to have greater access to work. But at the same time, if that's not environmentally sustainable, we're sort of sitting in the crosshairs of two situations. I'm also struck by, and this is maybe influenced a bit by my own research background. I years ago did a PhD where I was looking at the importance of international performance in terms of how companies establish themselves. And I think perhaps in the performing arts, at least certain segments of the performing arts, the sense in which we're used to the international space as being something to aspire to, this reliance that you spoke about, Vijay, on travel and how we've become so used to these types of exchange, and that those are sort of correlated with they're correlated with types of success. They're things that I think a lot of artists aspire to. But simultaneously, it feels very important to reframe that and to think about, well, what is the role of the performing arts in a local context? How do we kind of break our addiction to the international dimension of our work and refocus on a kind of more local level without losing the sense of solidarity and shared experience that's also emerging as something that feels very important. Also, this question of what is the spectator experience, whether that's about bringing spectators, bringing theater to more spectators, spending more time with theater, Martin, as you said, to wondering sort of how are spectators receiving some of this digital work. It's so new that we don't maybe have data on it yet. So I wonder, it feels like a very large knot of interconnected things. I wonder if a way to begin, because another thing that everyone's sort of spoken about in one way or another is the sense of how does the live and the digital coexist? What is the relationship between these two elements? Is it one of enhancement? Are they completely separate things? How should we think about it? And I wonder if we look at it from an ecological perspective, if that might help us start to think about what sorts of relationships could be possible. How can the digital space coexist with the live and the local in ways that are greener and more sustainable?
I think it's a difficult question, and we don't know it yet, probably because we've been using so intensively the internet and streamings and so on since the last year when we were under the lockdowns, and we have to do it in a way to be with our audiences. So it depends what will happen next, because if we'll have the third and fourth, wave, maybe we'll have to come back. But for the moment, what we are observing in the theater, people are massively coming to the theater again because it's open. They don't really. We have our platform, internet platform, but really the numbers are decreasing because it's nice. The spaces are again open, the venues are open, and people want this. They really need this contact, and this is why theater, what it's all about. It's what Gert said. It's the third dimension. You want to feel the actors, you want to hear them, you want to sense them somehow. So it's like super important. But of course, we have to adapt to the circumstances. We cannot. So we cannot predict what's going to happen. I think at the moment, what we decided, for example, for our venue, that we keep the internet platform going on, but on much less. We are showing much less now, and then we will see again what's gonna be. Because on the other hand, we got information from our public that it was very important for them, that some people, I'm not talking even internationally or worldwide, it was in Poland, super important that people who are living, in the other end of Poland could finally see the performances of a high quality. And it was very inclusive. And for us, it's super important that really, like what you mentioned in your questions, that it's becoming more democratic. Like really, the theater is going to people's homes under, like everybody can watch it in their own home, which is amazing. And this is what it should be all about. But of course, we cannot forget about this life experience as well. And I think we can do both and see what it's going to be. But as I said, for me, it's super important to raise this issue about internet carbon footprint. I think we are completely not aware about it. So it's something to think about.
Yeah.
About the if I can react about the data, how people are reacting on a online / live theater. I would say that we have at least like the Tramox. We had through the platform was more than 30,000 people, but this is subscription, so different model. But people are not considering it like it's theater. We had hundreds of conversations with their customers on different topics to direct what they need and what they want to do. And no one understands, no one pursue the theater online as okay, I will not go into the theater anymore because yeah, that's enough. It's the same. I'm not. I don't like so much using the same example from films, but it's the same. Like I said, okay, people have a Netflix, so they will not go into the cinema. That will not happen. It's so probably. No one. I never spoke with anyone which is using the Tramox who would mention, okay, I will not go into the theater. It has an absolutely opposite effect. And normally, when we had a conversation with people, spectators, customers, they are telling us absolutely opposite. Normally, I was at theater 3 times per year, for example. With a platforms like a Tramox or with an online opportunity, I already saw 10 performances, 12 performances, 20 performances, and it's absolutely opposite. And even the directors from the theaters, for example, from Czech Republic, are telling us we have a demand from that. The people directly sending the emails to the theaters. Hey, when you will be open and I will be in your area for vacation or for business trip or whatever. I never thought that this theater is such in a good shape for me as like my personal imagination how should look theater, and it's very speaking to me, and I will visit your theater when I will be there. Of course, I'm using it as an example, like a generic one, but this is already happening. And yeah, so it's absolutely opposite. And I don't even think that it's someone who thinks that, okay, digital theater and everything else is I will not go into the physical theater in my life because I have a stream. I can stream whatever I want from tons of theaters every Friday. So just to complete what Johanna said, completely agree.
Vijay, you had a comment?
Yeah, so I think one thing is that if we have the kind of shared reality that we're in an existential crisis, I think at that point we have to then actually interrogate the infrastructures that we have invested in for creating theater and performance locally and online. That we actually have to question our buildings, our theater buildings, and that as a site and place for where performance is given. Because after air travel, it's probably building energy and maintenance that is the second most carbon emitting activity that our performing arts field is engaged with. And so that has to be questioned, as well as the infrastructures that Gert mentioned this briefly about online, how our websites are actually designed and built. Are they the most frugal use of energy possible? And so those are the infrastructures that I think it's important to not take for granted, that we need to actually reinvest or every day propagate these same infrastructures, and that we can actually rethink them and redesign them.
Yes, Gert.
Yeah, I totally agree with Vijay that it should be a bit rethought. I maybe wanted to give an example of it was Noord-Nederlands Theater, it's called. It's in the Netherlands, and they created the Night Hotel, and they were speaking in one of our sessions. And I called him yesterday to ask, was it a success what you did finally? And he gave me some numbers, which is maybe interesting. So they created the Night Hotel. I can put it in the chat.
You're muted, Gert.
Sorry. So it's really very interactive. It's created really with a purpose to be presented online, and you can make choices during the presentation where you want to go to and so on. And it's live. It's live done, filmed with different cameras and so on. So they invested a lot to do this. I liked it very much in the beginning. Not just in the beginning, I liked it very much, but it was quite in the beginning of the pandemic that I came up with this, because the project was already being developed before the pandemic. And so they, during the lockdown, let's say it was 1.5 years, but normally they have 50,000, they reach 50,000 people audience. It's contemporary theater. It's in a year for a small theater company. They have, with all the presentations they do, about 50,000 people reach. Now during the lockdown, in 1 year, they had also 50,000 people reach online. So they had the same audience, let's say. And then it was for free in the beginning. And then at a certain moment, they switched to paid tickets. You had to pay for the tickets. And then it switched to 10,000. So it was only 20% of the people. So it was also less international. It was more from the Netherlands that were paying really. They know, maybe the people that know the theater, and they typically come to the physical performance, and then they also are prepared to pay for it online. So they will not continue it like with the same intensity as they did it until now during the lockdown. So, but they will still use it and do it on a regular basis, also for after talks with artists and so on. They will still use the platform, and but they will concentrate again on the physical performance, because they cannot combine both, and they don't have budget for both. So that's the reality. Same example is in Belgium with the KVS in Brussels. They, as I heard, is that they will continue to do every month one performance online, because what they mainly think. No, I'm sorry. This the people from the North Netherlands Theater that told me that they mainly think that they will use it especially for audience development. It's totally the other point of view from the audience development side. They extend their audience. There are a lot of international audience, much younger audience. That was also something they detected, much younger than the people that come physically to the hall. They hope to extend to make their people in the real halls younger also with it. So it's an audience development tool for them. And in the KVS, I know that it is paid, and the tickets are paid, and they sell thousands of tickets for these presentations each month. And I think they plan to continue also on a monthly basis. So that's what I just wanted to share.
Thank you. That's very interesting. This notion too of digital work being a way of potentially reaching and developing new audiences, that seems also to sit with Martin's example of people contacting theaters that they've only encountered this way. I'm part of a network of practitioners in the UK, and one of the things that's been quite interesting, it's interesting to hear you talk about the sort of local audiences for these projects. One of the things that's been quite interesting for this group of practitioners in the UK, many of whom, it must be said, are not originally from the UK, is that this period has given sort of unprecedented access to different aesthetics and the kinds of work that you don't see often in British theaters, which can feel kind of quite conservative by comparison. So I know that there are a lot of people there who are feeling very enlivened by being able to see these other examples of practice. I wanted to ask, and we've sort of have alluded to it a bit in the last set of responses, to what extent digital distribution can help democratize theater making, both in terms of who it's reaching and also who's making it. And I'm wondering if some of these strategies that have emerged during the pandemic, what sort of impact the opportunity to present digitally or collaborate digitally, what impact is it having on work that's being made now in terms of what's being made by whom and in what ways? So maybe it's, I guess, two questions. Sort of one is a question about process and how artists are finding new ways in response to these circumstances. And then maybe the other is about where those works sit, whether they're going through established channels of buildings and festivals, or whether we might be seeing other ways of getting work in contact with spectators.
If I just may add one other thing, what we noticed a lot in our network is that the main problem there was how these artists will be paid. That was the main issue when we were talking about democratizing or going digital. And there were some festivals that really continued to pay artists, even if it was digitally done without a public where the money comes from. So I just want to add that element to the discussion.
I would like to add something to what Gerd said. It was a very important issue for us, for example, and I think it has to do with this caring about each other and this tenderness towards the artists as well. Because in the pandemic times, it turns out that all the artists, they are not having performances, and it's fine if they have permanent contract in the theater, for example, as our ensemble, but what about the artists who are not in the ensemble and they don't have a work and they don't go to the festivals and then they don't get the money. And in the beginning, our idea was that, okay, let's make an online project, let's invent some topics, etc. And we did it. But my feeling was that somehow we forced those artists to work with some formats. Maybe they are not so into them and they don't feel them, you know. So I had this feeling that sometimes these were the experiences which were maybe not too good. And then we thought like, okay, maybe this is a time just to relax and not produce and give those artists who are not employed, like permanently employed, just like a development contract. So they can just do whatever. They don't have to do online works. They can just work on their own and think what they want to do with this and develop their projects they already have, which maybe will be an online projects there in the end, but maybe they will be staged at some point. So I think it's important way. It's an important way of thinking how we should. I don't know. In Poland, there is no like a social insurance for the artists who are not employed. So there was really a massive group of people who were left without nothing in the beginning because there was no grants, nothing for them. Later on it came, but it was later on. And I think this is our responsibility now to rethink it, how we take care about all those people who are not permanently employed and what resources we give to them. And we want to share our resources because we are municipal state theater, you know, so we have the resources from the city, from the people, and we are obliged somehow to share it with the artists. So this is one point. And on the other hand, about the digital performances, it was also like I spoke with the artists, and for some of them, it's okay to create a digital performances, but some of them don't feel like this is something for them. And we did one production, which was from the beginning an online theater performance, an online experiment with Wojtek Ziemilski, which was with the actors from Germany and actors from Croatia and actors from Poland. And I think, but there really has to be a willingness from the artists to work and to experiment with this tool, with the digital, because it's not a streaming of a already done performance. It's something completely new. It's a completely creating something new for the internet. And you know, taking into consideration all the aspects and all the difficulties of this medium. So I think it's very interesting topic how it will develop. We are now planning another online performance with Markus Orden, who is quite experienced in those online performances. So we are really wondering how it's going to be, and he really wants to work only online with the actors and to screen it from the beginning. So this is the idea from the beginning. So.
What about in the context of DramaX, Martin, if I can ask you, has the pandemic brought different types of performances to the platform? Are you seeing a broader range of aesthetics or approaches or new initiatives in response to the circumstances?
Yeah, of course. One thing to do more theaters or your question. Basically, during 3 months, happened that small theaters, not well known or on the borders, that was quite those theaters was most people spent most of the time with them because the performance was good. So it's more related to like that data show us that it doesn't matter if it's a big theater, of course it's helping, but we put on a DramaX, and that's the concept. Big variety of performances, from French style, alternative, one guy physical theater performance, to the 50 people on the stage, ballet, opera, whatever. And there is quite an interesting journey of the people, because people are visiting the Drama Box because of, I don't know, National Theatre, and they are starting to look on a one concrete performance which they want to see. But because we have a subscription and they have unlimited access for the month, they are discovering different performances. And if I do this quick statistic, I can see that if there is something new, something really interesting, and it's a good performance, and doesn't matter what is the theater, if it has a famous faces, what doesn't matter. Basically, nothing which is normal in a commercial, from commercial perspective or client perspective, is not working anymore. It's more democratizing the whole process, and if you have a small theater unknown well around the country, for example, but they have a great performance, it's popping up immediately, and people are sending through the WhatsApp or through the Facebook, hey, did you see this performance on the Drama Box? It's amazing. And word of the mouth is working very well. So this is about, oh, but okay, sorry, I don't know what I can do. This is basically internet here. But this is how the whole environment and journey of the people is working right now. So that's my that's my contribution from like a data perspective. What is happening? But if you are studying like a performance by performance, it's very different. I have data from different projects around the globe, and that's a cherry picking. People will choose exactly what they know already, or the artist which they visited before, and it's very hard for the small theaters to expand their audience heavily because it's fighting against everything online, every other theater. So if it's not a one price, single subscription model, nothing new. There is a cherry picking quite heavily, and it's not democratizing the whole process in a way which I described. So that's like just two simple business models which are influencing what people are spending time with heavily.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry, we're just having a bit of an issue with the sound. Is it that the subscription platform, are you saying, makes people more willing to sort of take risks and experience a broader range of things than if they had to find each individually? Yeah.
Exactly. That's it.
Great. Thank you. Because that was one question that I did have, whether there's a sense that there's a particular aesthetic that's favored by this type of platform, and what impact that might have on work being able to find its audience. I wonder if we could talk a bit, Gert, about about the initiative with Perform Europe and this notion of what more sustainable touring might look like. This is something that I've been thinking about recently. There was a call in London by LIFT, the London International Festival of Theatre, for concept touring, which I thought was a really interesting idea, the circulation of ideas rather than of people. I know much of the project has yet to happen, but I'm curious what sorts of strategies you may already be seeing that rethink how touring could look.
As you said, Becca, we are in the beginning of the project, but we had the research part. I didn't do it, so I'm not very specialist in that. It's a bit difficult to talk about this, I think, for me. I'm sorry. So, of course, it's what was found in the report is that there were a lot of discrepancies between the different countries in Europe, or the 41 countries, and that was confirmed on all levels, in fact. So that, for example, theater companies from Georgia are not playing in Western Europe. From Western Balkans, they're playing a lot in the Western Balkans, but they've never come to Europe. I think it's a known problem. So those things is what I know that came out of the research. To say more about sustainability inclusivity, I don't know exactly. So I'm sorry, I cannot speak more in detail about that.
No worries. Vijay or Joanna, do you want to weigh in on that?
I would like to add something in the discussion at this point, because it's interesting for me, because it depends from which point of view we are looking at it. I mean, if you are in France or in Holland or in Germany, it's easy to travel with the train. But if you live in Poland or Lithuania, it's not like I will pack all my group and they will go to by train somewhere on the tournée, because it's just not possible. So we have the choice now. Okay, we either go and make money, or also to function because we function like this from the festival, for going to the festivals and from the mobility, or we don't do it. And to be honest, it's a big question to raise as well. It's about inclusiveness. It's about democracy in Europe. It's about accessibility in Europe as well. Because really, I mean, for me in Poland, it's difficult to go with the train, I don't know, to another city, not mentioning some other country in Europe. I mean, it's all about accessibility. So I think it's a very important discussion. And there was this really very interesting letter from an artist from Mexico who was saying that if now we will decide, okay, it's not sustainable and it's not ecological anymore to travel, what about the artists from Mexico who can visit Europe and who can have money to function for another year if they do this tournée? So I think it's very difficult question how to solve this situation, you know, about traveling and not traveling. And maybe we also should think about it that, to be honest, I'm totally eco-engaged and pro-eco, but maybe it's not also the mobility who is raising so much carbon footprint. I don't know. I think we have to look at this topic from many different angles. It's not one simple answer to this question.
I maybe can say something about Perform Europe Extra. So in fact, Perform Europe wants to fill exactly these gaps of mobility, of touring, but in a sustainable way. That's the idea. But the sustainable ideas, I don't know them yet. There were already some brainstorms, but I was unfortunately not involved. The idea is to give grants for exactly that part, to exactly solve to improve the balance between the different countries, to improve the inclusivity. That's the main idea of the project, of course. Yeah.
That's great. Maybe it's also about, I would just add last sentence, that maybe it's also about us, the theaters and the tournée makers, to think about logistics, that instead of planning one city, we plan 5. So the scenography goes once in this direction, not many times back and forth. So I see such options as possible options, but not reducing the mobility and going to the festivals or attending international events.
Yeah, it's all in the sustainability, of course. Huh? I can imagine that you have in the project, it's mandatory to work together with at least 3 countries. So you need 3 presentations in 3 different countries. That's the minimum for one distribution plan, and with that distribution plan you can receive a grant. And so I can imagine that you have these 3 countries, but in the meantime you do some satellite presentations at the borders or during the travel to that location. So these are kind of sustainable ways of thinking, or also the slow art, as they say, and the slow that you, instead of going for one presentation, you stay longer and you stay for lots of presentations or more presentations on different locations, close to the first location. But it's just some ideas that I have now in my mind, but I can imagine that there are lots of other ideas to make it more sustainable, inclusive, and balanced. That are the three keywords, in fact, for Perform Europe. The grants will be given to create more balance, to the ideas that are most sustainable and that are most innovative in that way. Yeah.
Well, one idea that's emerging, that's been emerging in terms of inclusion for artists, which, for example, which artists get to be visible, and the online space being one way where it's a little more democratic than or inclusive than the traditional gatekeepers of in-person venues. And one way to think about this is thinking of shared and collective infrastructures for online spaces. And so this includes the web tools, the internet tools that we use, as well as the equipment that's needed to do a live streaming, that this kind of thing can be mutualized or made cooperative in many different local regions and made available to people who have been artists who have been historically excluded from participating and creating culture. And something like this would be fantastic for a project like the EU, because it has because of that union, and that's in a bit, it's a bit of a countercultural idea to have shared infrastructure that's available, a commons, basically, commoning platforms, because we're still very much influenced, though much of our work is publicly funded or privately funded, not outside of a commercial realm, that we still have adopted certain kind of capitalist market-based behaviors that make sharing and sharing platforms something that we don't naturally do. So that's just one thing about kind of digital democracy.
Thank you. I think this notion of the commons and this kind of mutuality, it's making me think a bit of what some others have said about this notion of solidarity, and maybe this being a moment where, in the aftermath of something like the experience we've all just had of the pandemic, that, you know, it's sort of precisely sometimes these moments that perhaps open space for new structures, which feels quite exciting to think about. And I think there have been, I know I've been in several conversations that have happened during the course of the past year and a half, where this question of sort of when things resume again, what is it that's resuming? Like, what do we want to carry forward? I'm sure we've all taken part in those conversations, but it does feel that there is perhaps scope for things that are disruptive. And certainly something like this potential through Perform Europe to actively search for some of these structures, that feels quite exciting. Just want to remind our attendees that if you have any questions for the panelists, you can share them with us via the chat window, or we also have a Q&A function. I'm not entirely sure which of those are available to the attendees, but I can see both of them. So if any questions come through those, I will forward them. I wonder at this stage, just sort of thinking about where we're at in this whole experience, what are some of the things that concern or excite you in this moment? We've talked about urgency. Maybe, you know, what feels encouraging? if anything?
Oh, what part? I hope that my sound will be better. Is it better or not? Okay, so that doesn't matter. I will leave the field for someone else.
Yeah, one thing is encouraging is definitely the prior to the pandemic, there was definitely much more of a feeling of how, for example, the deaf theater communities internationally have always been very much siloed, or the non-deaf theater communities have siloed the deaf theater communities, artists, and that siloing has broken down a bit. And there's a bit more awareness about that, as well as artists who have disabilities. And that also has been broken down a bit. So that's definitely an encouraging thing.
And can I ask, Vijay, how you see that happening? Has the opening of the digital space or its expansion, how has that worked there? And might that be a model for even broader inclusivity for other groups?
Yeah, it's worked in that organizations have become, just generally as culturally, the performing arts field has become more and more, at least I'll speak from the North American perspective, more aware of inclusion in the past 10 years or so. And this also includes movements, anti-patriarchal movements, and recognizing indigenous people and land, and recognizing colonialism. And all of these things have helped organizations to actually practically start to implement and budget for different behaviors and practices, day-to-day practices. So, for example, an online conversation, oftentimes now it's not the norm, but much more than before, captioning would happen, or invitations to deaf theater makers to actually watch an event, and there'd be sign language interpretation. So the organizations building the practice and the muscle to budget and provision for these things that weren't in these cultural managers' minds prior. And so there's a lot more diversity, there's more multiculturalism that's possible. And that's just, I think people are seeing the wealth of that, the richness of multiculturalism.
That is very encouraging. Are other panelists seeing comparable things or anything that resonates with this? Sorry, Martin, sorry. I'm trying to judge who's going to speak by whose microphones are unmuted, and it gets a little, I think we would all be extremely practiced at this by now, but the Zoom platform continues to surprise.
I can maybe say something from out of the festival world, but I think the positive thing, it has nothing to do with Vijay, what he said. It's just the positive that comes out of this pandemic. I think that's a bit your question, is it? Yeah. So I have the feeling that the festivals are becoming more resilient, more sustainable after this. Sustainable, it's maybe not right. Resilient is the right word. So it was an experience. They wanted to reach the audience and they couldn't. How to solve it? Then the digital, and they feel the advantages, the disadvantages of going digital. They learned the investments related to it. They learned how to. It's not just streaming. You need quality streaming. It's not the same. So it's quite some investment related to it. But so the festivals learned all this. So what they learned, they will not lose. So also in future, there might be more and more combinations of physical and digital and eventually hybrid formats. So I think that's good for the sector. They learned how to deal with difficult situations like the pandemic, and to use more techniques. It made the evolution, the digital evolution, a bit faster. The learning process, we were forced to do it. So I think that's from festival association view, the positive thing that comes out. Yeah.
It feels a bit like at least in the sort of European context, that it's been a rapid acceleration of practice, and some of the funding and support structures haven't quite caught up yet. But then that's the work, I guess, of this next phase, is sort of figuring out what sorts of shifts in funding paradigms and presentation structures are necessary to support these sorts of hybrid models. Yeah, and to allow everything that's been learned to continue to kind of flow forward in more inclusive and sustainable ways.
I just repeat what I said in the beginning, in the introduction, that yeah, it should not be a shift, huh? It's and story. It's an addition, so it's not. Sometimes we have the feeling that governments now just switch everything to digital because digital is prior and so on, but the budgets for physical also have to stay. It's crucial. The festival world is a physical world. It's not a digital world, but some digitalization can definitely enrich the offer or make it sometimes more sustainable. Yeah, I guess we have to think more that way.
And it feels like it's important maybe that's artist-led, in the sense of not there's funding for digital or there's funding for live, but that there's scope for artists to conceive projects in ways that incorporate both of these elements or multiple elements, or perhaps a single project can have multiple iterations that allows it to adapt and be modular. I think that's something that I know I've been thinking a lot about in the past year, as I've had the experience of adapting site responsive projects to digital formats and having to sort of rearrange budgets, in my case, very kind of small ones, to sort of create unexpected digital outputs of a physical process. So, but what it's done is shown it's sort of broadened the range of things that are possible and the lenses through which it's possible to look and design projects. So that's something that's been quite exciting for me personally. And I think from some of the conversations we've had in Green Thursdays, similar things have been going on for many people. And I think it is also very much the case that for some people, this has been an absolute no, that for them, the practice is one that is in person and is about that in-person encounter. So yeah, it's just to reinforce what you're saying about there needing to be space in this for the sort of scope of responses that artists have to these things.
Can I try lifetime, if it's working or not?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I will try without the video. One thing, and again, it's filled with the data from Termux, that if you visit theater, especially Western Europe, poor people are not sitting there. It's quite a pricey entertainment to go to the theater. And I can tell right now that it's already happening that people which not normally can afford to see a broad selection of the theaters, or they have not even the possibility to go to the theater more than once per year, or have a relationship with this art form. Now they have this possibility. So it's helping even for the less financially happy people, to more poor people, to have an experience and spend more time with the theater. And I'm not even mentioning what we are doing with the schools, like the drama school schools, but that's another layer. But this is something which I think we didn't mention yet properly, and it's really helping, and it's helping both sides. Theaters are getting another revenue stream, so they have more independency, they have more space, and in the same time they have a different type of audience which they cannot afford if there would not be this digital stream, digital way. So yeah, that's something different. And basically, I'm reacting mainly on what Johanna said, that people from different part of the Poland saw their performances, and which they would normally never visit them. And yeah, that's the goal. If anything interesting is happening, we are getting to theater starting to be part of their lives, of the people which they would never visit theater, price, distance, whatever it is.
Thank you. And looking back over some of the questions I prepared to see if there's anything we've not covered. It's such a complex set of issues that we're interrogating, really, when we're talking about streaming theater. It sounds like such a simple concept, but I think really this conversation is revealing how many layers there are to this, in terms of the structures, in terms of the carbon footprint, in terms of different questions of accessibility, and in terms of how much is still yet to be figured out. We've had this very intense experience, but yeah, there's a lot still to discover. Yeah, Vijay.
Yeah, just want to go back to something that Joanna mentioned, which is there is currently this paradigm that we've lived with for decades now of mobility being coupled with career advancement or opportunities, or even just the ability to make a living. And that's one paradigm. What we don't have currently is the opposite being true, which a paradigm of the more local you get rooted, the more career advancement or opportunities or ability to make a living you can have. Same is true for streaming. There's not really a real economics incentive to stream that's long term, that you can make a artistic life from at the moment. So I just wanted to throw that out there as kind of a paradigm problem that we have.
I would agree to some extent, because I think that if there is a social care of the artist, and if we are talking about the wealthy countries, then yes, they can stay local. But if you are from Ukraine, Belarus, if you are from Mexico, I'm not sure that you can make a living staying in your community just. And it's not about advancing your career only, but it's about making living. This letter, I won't remember the name of the artist, but it was really like touching, that he said that if he goes for tournée to Europe, then he can really like make his art and his whole group. It's not all about him, it's about his whole ensemble. For 1 year, they can exist. And this is something very important for me also, that we are sharing this, what we have all together, and that we share these resources, and that we invite people and we can pay them so they can do their art afterwards. And I totally agree about staying and building your community and making a dialogue with your community and growing there. But when it comes to economic aspects, it may be difficult, I guess, in some countries and in some places where you don't have this like social backup from your government, I guess.
I would add maybe one layer. I don't agree that those platforms cannot hold financially the artists. Of course, cannot hold a big theater with hundreds of people. Of course not. But if it's independent artists, 2-3 people, there are several options. Of course, we are additional. In terms, we are something which, I don't know, for some of the period of time, we have been able to give them 25% of their cost, for example, per month. Yeah, but that's like a part. But if you combine it, and again, I'm speaking about the independent, mostly the small groups, small companies, theater companies. You have platforms which you need just which will do the same thing for you, like a Patreon, for example. And this is the part where theater companies are already streaming there and doing their living for 1,000 people. And this is their community, and the community is around the globe, and everyone is paying, I don't know, $10 per month. But if you're living in Mexico or in Ukraine and you have 10,000 euros per month, you can have a proper theater. I mean, like a proper independent theater group. And this is something, yeah, so I don't agree that artists cannot live with a purely digital. I don't believe that they should, honestly, but there is this possibility to do that and build a community completely online.
But it's also the question of accessibility, how you reach these audiences of 10,000 people. I mean, if you are not well-known artist, it may be difficult. You have to have, I guess, some platforms to reach those people. And I think this is also an important issue.
Yeah, agree. That's of course the mission which we have. But there is a way, and Patreon is a great example. I would recommend to dig deeper for the independent theater groups. It's very interesting what is happening there, and they are combining, and even they have a more revenue and financial income from online than physical, and even if they are doing both. So of course, it's a long-term project to establish your community, but that's like an extra. It's very, very interesting times when I'm speaking with the theaters. If even with the independent artists, it's a very interesting time for them. They have so much opportunities, and they just need to focus on a few things to not be distracted. But the amount of opportunities which they have, like doubled from pre-pandemic time.
That makes me wonder how these sorts of structures like Patreon or podcasting or other things that sort of allow that direct audience encounter, they allow a sort of bypassing of traditional kind of gatekeepers. How then that sits in relation to the structures that we're more familiar with, to the festival infrastructure, to larger buildings, to funding streams. It's definitely, I think, a diversification of possibilities for sure. And I think you're right that there is an extent to which it's almost overwhelming, the wealth of possibilities that are emerging or have emerged that we're still responding to. I'm conscious of the time and the fact that we're down to our last 10 minutes. There's something in our Q&A. So Pavla is asking, I fell in love with theater as a teenager when schools ran a club of young spectators that were affordable for basically everyone. Do you think that the young generation can develop a relationship with theater through digital platforms?
Can I?
Go ahead.
This is exactly what we are doing with our drama sports schools. Basically, we are giving access to the schools and colleges, and we are giving because not every teacher is a specialist and understand very well the theater. So we are preparing the set of materials with a local theater university, and we will do the same thing in a selection of European countries very soon. And to avoid a situation which I had or experience which I had, and that was that I was born in a small village, and a teacher here just show us some theater record, close the windows, and in the dark we slept 1 hour, and after that he had a check. We spent the time with the theater, and that's it. And so we want to absolutely delete that approach and give to the schools and the teachers tools how to excite the people, because very often teachers are those which are involved and love the theater, but they haven't the tool in their hands to express that very different variety of the performances to the people, to the audience, to the child, to the students. And that's something which we want to give, because for one student, national theater from, I don't know, Bratislava can be exactly what they want to see, but for another it's a ballet, for another maybe it's an opera, but and this big variety is giving them the increasing the possibility that they will find something which they fit with their what they love, with something which they could love, and they will fall in love with the theater, with some type of the theater, and on the end they will visit the theater, and so it's a Ouroboros.
Thank you. Okay, as we start to close, maybe I might just ask each of you where we're going from your perspective. What's next?
I think we are going to a hybrid world, digital, physical, where both will have their value, both have their functions, their roles to play. I heard a lot about the digital in the last hour, about when we were talking about democratizing, that it can be used. That's how I see it. It can be used as an audience development tool to make it more to reach more people. I heard also that it opens up for artists more possibilities, although it's economically not always that easy. But Martin says that it is possible. So where are we going? I think to some kind of hybrid world, and maybe someday there will be another virus, and then we will be ready to do it a different way for some time. Let's hope not, but it's always possible. And I think both have their value. Physical world is something. I'm over 50 years old, so I was born in a time without smartphones and so on, and it was important for me to feel the vibrations of the music concerts and the theater where I went to, even smell the actors on stage when you're close to the stage. So that's I don't see that happening on a virtual platform. So for me, it will stay difficult, but I think younger people that are used to play games, being in virtual worlds like that, maybe for them it's enough to get attracted to something, and then maybe later on feel the vibrations in real physical possibility, or a combination of both. Yeah, I think it's definitely part of the future. Digital platforms, they're already there, by the way, so sometime. Voila.
I don't know where we are going, but maybe I will tell where I would like to go. So I would like to go to the place where there is a sisterhood, there is a solidarity, there is this feeling of caring of each other. There is we are concerned about the planet, and we care about our planet and about human beings. And I think it's the most important topic for us now, because of the pandemic, we experienced something bigger than us, something which was unexpected, but somehow expected. And I think we are in the same moment right now, that somehow we talk about climate crisis and we expect it, but apocalypse is not there yet. So we are hesitating to make those moves. So maybe it's a high time to think about it now, and just to take those steps, and crucial steps, and think about it and rethink our functioning in this planet, and the functioning of cultural organization, because I believe we start with ourselves, and then we start with our places where we work. And yes, I wish we are going in this direction. Thank you.
Yeah, I too don't know where we're going, but I'd like us to go this place, which is to really develop resilience, in a sense where we're not waiting for the next kind of collapse, but we are anticipating and creating right now controlled collapses of the way that we operate and do our performing arts, and collapse the things on purpose that are not aligned, that are ecocidal, and that aren't aligned with equality and justice, and that we start to really incorporate radical inclusion into the work that we do as cultural managers and artists. And what that means is centering inclusion in what we do, as opposed to something that we retrofit into our work, and that we become aware of reducing harm and reducing our impact on the environment and people, and that we don't and that we become aware of the costs of us doing our activity, of all the different costs that are oftentimes hidden, and that we figure out ways to heal the systems of oppression that we take for granted, and that we just operate, and that we think are not changeable, because everything is really changeable. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think those are inspiring words and an inspiring vision to end on. I want to thank everyone for participating in the conversation, all of our panelists, and also the Rehearsal for Truth Festival for hosting this discussion. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone who's joined us, who's attended, and yeah, have a great rest of the day.